Stop everything, because what we're about to reveal completely shatters the story you've been told. The real question isn't whether the Brown family is divided anymore. It's how someone on the inside is quietly watching everything and reporting it back. For months, maybe even years, the children have been speaking out, telling their side, exposing moments the cameras never fully captured. Through reaction videos, live streams, and late-night posts, they've taken control of the narrative in a way no one expected. But something doesn't add up. Not even close. Because while certain people claim they're above the noise, above the chaos of social media, they somehow know everything. Not just general gossip. Specific details. Exact words. Private moments that were never meant to reach them. Think about that for a second. How does someone who says they've cut ties, who claims they don't watch, end up responding almost word for word to things said online? That's not coincidence. That's not luck, that's access. And the answer, according to growing whispers and increasingly detailed theories, may be sitting quietly in plain sight, under the same roof, unnoticed by most people watching from the outside Aurora. While the rest of the siblings are out building lives, creating distance, and finally speaking freely, there's one person who seems to exist in a completely different world. A world that's quiet, controlled, observant at first glance. It looks like absence, like silence, like someone who simply chooses not to engage. But what if that silence isn't real? What if it's strategic? Because here's where things take a turn that most people didn't see coming. According to insider chatter and deep dive communities who've been tracking patterns for months, Aurora isn't disconnected at all. In fact, the theory suggests the exact opposite. She may be the most active of all, just not in a way anyone can easily trace. No public posts. No visible reactions. No obvious presence. Just shadows. Accounts with no names. No faces. No followers. Watching everything. Every story. Every video. Every late-night upload, always there. Never seen. And the timing? That's where it gets uncomfortable. Because again and again, moments of online activity seem to line up perfectly with sudden reactions. Sudden outbursts. Sudden responses that are just a little too accurate to be guessworked. It's like someone is feeding information in real time. Detail by detail, word for word. Now step back and look at the bigger picture, because this is where it starts to feel less like speculation and more like a pattern. The family isn't just divided, it's fractured into two completely different realities. On one side, you have independence. Voices being heard. Stories being told without filters. And on the other, you have isolation. Tight control. Loyalty being tested at every level. In the past, information flowed naturally. Conversations happened. Updates were shared without effort. But those connections didn't just fade. They were cut. Abruptly. Completely. And when that happened, something changed. Because for someone who thrives on control, not knowing is the worst possible outcome. And when you can't access information the normal way, you find another way. That's where this theory becomes impossible to ignore. Imagine living in an environment where approval is everything. Where being seen as loyal isn't optional, it's survival. Where even the smallest act of usefulness can mean the difference between distance and acceptance. Now imagine having the ability to provide something no one else can anymore: information. Suddenly, silence isn't weakness, it's power. And if these theories are even partially true, what may have started as something small, something almost innocent, could have evolved into something much bigger. Something constant. Something deliberate. Not just occasional updates, but continuous monitoring, watching, collecting, relaying. And the most chilling part, no one on the outside would ever know it's happening, because the accounts don't speak, they don't interact, they don't exist, at least not in any way that can be easily proven, but they're there, always there. And when certain videos drop, when certain names are mentioned, when certain stories begin to gain traction, the reaction on the other side comes almost like clockwork: precise, targeted, personal. Too precise to be random. Too personal to be second-hand. Which raises a question that's far more uncomfortable than any theory. If someone is watching this closely, if someone is reporting back in this level of detail, what does that do to trust? Because this isn't just about information anymore, it's about loyalty, and loyalty, in a situation like this, comes with a cost. On one side, you have the need to belong. to stay close, to prove you're still on the right team. And on the other, you have relationships that may never recover if this is true, because once trust is broken at that level, it doesn't come back. Not fully, not ever. And maybe that's the real story here. Not just who's watching, but why, because if someone feels like this is the only way to stay valued, the only way to maintain connection, then this goes deeper than strategy. It becomes personal, it becomes emotional, it becomes something far more complicated than people realize, and suddenly, the quietest person in the room isn't just observing the story. They might be controlling it. This might sound unbelievable, but what if everything you've been watching is only half the story? What if the real truth has been unfolding quietly, behind the scenes, completely unnoticed? Because something isn't adding up, and the deeper you look, the more unsettling it becomes. It all started when certain members of the family stopped staying silent. One by one, they began speaking out, sharing their experiences, revealing moments that were never fully shown. Through videos, reactions, and personal uploads, they slowly took control of their own narrative. And with every new revelation, the tension grew. But here's where things take a turn that no one can easily explain. While all of this has been happening publicly, there's someone on the other side who claims to be completely disconnected. Someone who insists they don't engage with social media, who acts like they're above the noise, above the drama, and yet, somehow, they know everything. Not just vague details. Not just rumors, specific words. Exact points. Perfectly timed responses. That's not guesswork, that's not coincidence, that's access. So the question becomes impossible to ignore. If they're not watching, then who is? And more importantly, who's feeding them this information? Because answers don't just appear out of nowhere. Especially not answers this precise. This is where a theory begins to take shape, one that, at first, sounds far-fetched, but quickly becomes difficult to dismiss. What if the connection hasn't been lost at all? What if, instead, it's simply been hidden? Think about it. While some individuals have become increasingly visible, sharing their lives, their opinions, their truth, there's at least one person who has done the exact opposite. Quiet. Reserved. Almost invisible online. There are no public reactions. No clear presence. No obvious involvement. On the surface, it looks like distance, but what if it isn't distance at all? What if it's something far more deliberate? Because according to growing speculation and patterns that have been closely observed, that silence might not be what it seems. In fact, it might be the key to everything. There are whispers, unconfirmed, but persistent, that behind the lack of a public presence lies something entirely different. A level of activity that doesn't leave a trace. Accounts that don't post, don't interact, don't draw attention, but never miss a single update. Watching every video. Viewing every story. Tracking every move. Always present, just never seen. And the timing of certain reactions only adds fuel to the theory. Moments where something is said online, and not long after, a response appears that feels almost too accurate. Too aligned. As if the original message was delivered directly, without any distortion. Not secondhand. Not filtered but seen firsthand. And when this happens more than once, it stops feeling like coincidence. It starts to feel like a pattern. Now take a step back and look at the environment this could exist in. A space where loyalty carries weight. Where approval matters. Where being seen as supportive isn't just appreciated, it's expected. In that kind of setting, having access to information becomes more than just useful. It becomes powerful. Because when communication lines break down, when connections are cut, information doesn't stop being valuable. If anything, it becomes even more important. And for someone in a position to provide that information, their role suddenly changes. What may have started as something small, an occasional update, a quick glimpse into what others were saying, could evolve into something far more consistent, more structured, more intentional, not just checking in, but keeping track. Not just observing, but reporting. And if that's even partially true, it raises a much deeper question. What does that do to trust? Because this isn't just about who's watching anymore, it's about why. Why would someone stay silent publicly, but remain so deeply connected privately? Why take on that role? Is it loyalty? Is it pressure? Or is it the only way to stay close in a situation where everything else is falling apart? Because the truth is, when trust begins to crack at this level, it doesn't just affect one relationship. It changes everything. And if this theory turns out to hold any truth at all, then the quietest person in the room might not just be observing the story. They might be shaping it. And just when you think it couldn't get any more intense, this is where the situation takes an even darker turn. Because if someone really is watching from the inside, this isn't just about curiosity anymore. This becomes strategy. To understand how deep this could go, you have to look at what the family has turned into today. This isn't just distance. This isn't just disagreement. It feels like a divide that's been completely locked in on one side. You have independence, voices growing louder, stories being told without filters, people finally stepping out and living life on their own terms. And on the other side, you have control. A much tighter, more contained environment where loyalty seems to matter more than anything else. And in the past, there was always a bridge between those two sides. Information flowed naturally. Conversations filled in the gaps. Updates came through without effort. No one needed to search for answers because they were already being shared. But that bridge? It's gone, and not quietly either. It's been cut off completely, which creates a problem. Because when someone is used to knowing everything, suddenly knowing nothing isn't just uncomfortable, it's unacceptable. And that's where this theory starts to feel less like speculation, and more like a solution. Because if information can't come through the usual channels anymore, it has to come from somewhere else. Somewhere closer. Somewhere trusted. Now think about the role someone in that environment could play. Someone who is always present. Always nearby. Someone who understands exactly what is expected of them. Someone who knows that being helpful, being loyal, can change how they're seen. In that position, access becomes opportunity, and opportunity can quickly turn into responsibility. Because what starts as something small, checking a post, watching a video, passing along a detail, can very easily grow into something far more consistent, a routine, a system, a role. And according to ongoing speculation, that's exactly what may have happened. There are claims, again, unconfirmed but widely discussed, that certain anonymous accounts exist purely to observe. No personal content. No interaction. No identity attached, just silent tracking. Accounts that don't speak, but see everything. And what makes this even more unsettling is the pattern people believe they've spotted. Because every time something major is said publicly, every time a new video drops or a bold statement is made, it doesn't stay isolated for long. Not long after, a reaction appears on the other side, and not just any reaction. One that feels informed, detailed. Almost too accurate, as if the original message didn't have to travel through layers of interpretation, but was delivered directly. And when that happens repeatedly, people start asking questions. Serious ones, because at that point, it's no longer about maybe. It becomes about how. How is this information getting through so precisely? How does someone who claims complete distance respond with such clarity? And most importantly, who is making that possible? Because if there really is someone acting as that link, someone quietly gathering everything and passing it along, then this isn't just observation. This is involvement. Deep involvement. And that brings us to the emotional side of this situation, something people often overlook. Because stepping into that kind of role doesn't come without a cost. And on one hand, there's the need to stay close, to be trusted, to be seen as loyal in an environment where that matters above everything else. But on the other hand, there are relationships outside of that space. Connections that existed long before all of this. Bonds that, if broken in this way, may never fully recover. And that's where things become complicated. Because if someone believes they're doing the right thing, if they believe they're protecting or supporting, they may not even realize the damage it could cause elsewhere. Or maybe they do, and that's what makes it even harder. Because then it becomes a choice. A quiet, ongoing decision to stay in that role, no matter what it might cost in the long run. And if all of this is even partially true, then we're not just looking at a breakdown in communication, we're looking at something much more calculated, a system where information is still flowing, just not in a way anyone expected. And the most unsettling part, the people on the outside, the ones speaking freely, sharing openly, may have no idea that their words aren't staying where they think they are, that every post, every video, every moment, might be reaching someone they never intended it to, which changes everything. Because once you realize you're being watched, even silently, nothing feels the same anymore. And if this really is what's happening behind closed doors, then the story isn't just about a divided family, it's about control, it's about loyalty, and it's about a role that no one ever officially confirmed. And now, here's where the theory gets even more chilling. Because if this isn't just observation, if it's truly strategic, then the implications go far beyond simple family drama. Picture this: a household where every move is potentially monitored, every post analyzed, every story noted. While the siblings are out living their lives, celebrating milestones, or creating content for the world to see, there's someone inside quietly gathering it all. Every laugh, every rant, every reaction becomes data. Patterns form. Insights emerge. And those insights could shape reactions, decisions, even the dynamics of the entire family. At first, it might have seemed harmless. A clip shown here, a conversation passed along there. But over time, according to insiders and keen observers, this evolved. It became routine. A full-time awareness of everything happening outside the controlled environment. Accounts with no identity, profiles that never post, but they see everything. Every story, every reel, every new upload. And critically, they report it back, and the timing of events begins to tell a story of its own. Certain videos drop. Certain statements are made. And almost immediately, the responses align perfectly, almost as if someone was reading from a script, except it's not scripted. It's informed. Precisely informed. Think about the psychology of this. Loyalty and approval in this environment aren't optional. They're the currency. For someone raised under this pressure, being useful can mean the difference between connection and isolation. And in that context, access to information isn't just power, it's survival. So the quietest person in the room, the one who appears distant, may in fact be the most influential. Every subtle act, every careful observation, every private report feeds the system of control. And the outside world, even those closest to them, may have no idea it's happening. Now layer in the emotional stakes. Relationships outside this monitored space are at risk. Trust can fracture permanently. Siblings speaking openly may never fully understand how their words are being seen, interpreted, and reported back. And for the person inside, the tension is constant. A delicate balance between loyalty to one side and the unseen consequences on the other. This is why patterns repeat. Why reactions sometimes seem impossibly precise. Why trust is fragile and every word feels weighted. If even part of this theory is true, we're witnessing more than a family divided. We're witnessing a silent, ongoing operation, part observation, part influence, part emotional manipulation. And it raises the ultimate question. When one person quietly shapes what the rest experience, who really holds the power? Because in this house, it may not be the loudest voices that matter. It may be the quietest ones, the ones no one sees coming, that control everything. This isn't just family drama. This is strategy. This is loyalty tested to its limit. This is influence at its most unseen, and it could be changing the course of every relationship in that home forever. And here's where it gets even more intense. Because if this theory holds any truth, we're not just talking about monitoring. We're talking about a level of control that can change how the entire family communicates, and how the outside world sees them. Imagine being the person on the inside. Every post your siblings make, every reaction they share, every late-night video, they're all visible to you. Nothing escapes notice. And in a household where loyalty is everything, that visibility carries weight. It's not just information, it's influence. At first, it might have started as a small gesture, showing a clip, passing along a detail. But over time, this evolved. Observers report that it's become consistent, almost systematic. Anonymous accounts, burner profiles, ghost identities, all carefully watching, collecting, and reporting back. Every story viewed, every post noted, every reaction logged. And here's the chilling part, the timing. Insiders have pointed out that key reactions from the parents often align perfectly with posts made by the children. Coincidence? Hardly. Almost too precise to be random. Details, phrases, even the sequence of events, all mirrored. Now, layer in the psychology. In an environment where being seen as loyal is critical, every act of usefulness increases your standing. Providing information becomes a currency, a way to prove alignment, a way to stay close. And when the person in this position realizes how powerful their access is, that small gesture can become a role, a permanent responsibility that few outsiders would ever understand, and the emotional stakes. They're massive. Relationships outside the immediate influence can become fragile. Trust can erode in ways that aren't obvious until it's too late. Every word shared publicly has the potential to reach unintended eyes, to inform responses that alter family dynamics. This is where the silence becomes deceptive. What looks like detachment or disinterest may actually be vigilance. What appears to be absence may be the most active role of all. And in an environment where control is everything, that activity can shift the balance of power in subtle but profound ways. So when you start noticing patterns, responses that seem just a little too accurate, reactions that mirror online posts almost perfectly, what you're seeing may not be chance. It may be part of a deliberate system, an unseen operation that few outside the house could even imagine, and that's the danger and the fascination of this theory. Because in a family already complicated by division, distance, and drama, the quietest person might not only be observing the story, they might be quietly controlling it. Every word, every post, every reaction. Seen, noted, delivered. And the more this goes on, the more the rest of the family is unknowingly playing into a system they may not even know exists. This isn't just about secrets. This isn't just about family tension. This is about unseen influence, control, and the weight of loyalty tested to its absolute limits. And in the end, the question remains, who really holds the power when what seems silent may actually be the most decisive force of all?